talk a little bit about Fancybox. Let's go ahead and go to the course website. So I'm going to click on the browser, BT1400. And when it brings up the grid, we'll go down in here to personal web page. And we'll go ahead and click on Fancybox. Now, what is Fancybox? Fancybox is really a tool for displaying images. It's really nice because it'll take the image and kind of float it over the top of a web page. We can see some examples of that. We click on it, it comes up, floats over the top, and we can kick out of that. So I'm going to go ahead and download Fancybox, and we're going to go through the code so that you can use this in your websites. It's a great little tool. So I'm going to go ahead and get the newer version. They've got a link to this newer version of Fancybox. So I'm going to scroll to that, click on download version 2.1.3. That drops it into my download folder. I'm going to drag that out. I'm going to name this Fancybox 2.1.3. Alright, and what I can do is inside of Fancybox it has a little demo folder, so I can double click on the demo, and then there's an index.html file. I can drag that into the window, and that has a working version of Fancybox. So we can go ahead and click and see different kinds of effects, different kinds of working environments calling different jQuery functions in the library. So it just shows you different versions, and those are some sample ones. Let's go ahead and look at the source code on this. I'm going to drag index.html into my text wrangler. I'm going to increase the size of the code to 18 so you can actually see it. I'm going to increase the width of my window a little bit more, and I'll probably soft wrap it so that I don't like that well. We'll leave it a little bit bigger and wrapping for a minute. Alright, so let's go through the code. We know what doc type is, HTML head, title, meta tags. We've covered those in other environments. This might be new. It's add the jQuery library. What this is doing is it's referencing a library, the jQuery library, the 1.8.2 min.js version. And where you'll find that is if we go back to the demo, what it's saying is go to the lib folder and go access that file right here. So this jQuery-1.8.2 min.js. So it's accessing that file. So these scripts or framework libraries are very important. Obviously it won't function without those scripts, and so each one of these is a source to different scripts. And so we've got the jQuery mouse wheel, a link back to that. The Fancybox CSS, so if we go to source jQuery Fancybox, so we have all of these files in here, so source and then jQuery Fancybox CSS, so we've got that file right there. So these are links to the different files in the demo that need to be there for this to function. The thumbnails, the media, etc. Now the next section covers some internal scripts for the jQuery to work as well, and let's cover some of those. Really, what we have right here is this $document.ready function. What that's saying, that's a script that says, you know, let's load all of the scripts before we let this thing run. So let's make it sure the code runs when it's ready. Let's go down here a little bit more. Now, there are a number of different $, something in quotes, dot something, and then parentheses. That's really the syntax in jQuery for $selector dot action. And you see this throughout the thing. So if we have $, it looks like we've got a CSS class here for Fancybox-effects-a. And so we'll use that in there. Then we keep going down and we'll get Fancybox effects B. So these are different versions of the Fancybox effects that we can call and the associated scripts with them. So that's really what's happening in here. And so what you need to remember is, you know, to change any of these, you have your selector inside of here and then your action here. and then your parameters that you can, you know, how fast it'll go, how slow it'll go, whether a close click will close it, overlay, you know, whatever parameters we want to set inside that. Key again here is selector inside the quotes and then the action, and so those are your selectors and then your Fancybox actions. Let's go ahead and scroll down. Now when it has a $sign, what does that mean? That's an ID selector. So the dots, if we scroll up, this one, .fancybox-media, that's a class in CSS that we're calling. We scroll down here, and this is an ID. An ID because you have a number sign in front of it. But again, those are just selectors within CSS. Let's keep going down. Fancybox custom. So here we go. Right here, that's one of our classes, and then the properties and the values for that class. The rest is HTML and calling which kinds of class inside of here for each of the effects. So the class will call the effects, and that's what makes those the thumbnail and the bigger picture use those kinds of effects on each one of those. So that's basically how it works, and more of it throughout that code. And I think that's all in terms of what you need to know to get your Fancybox to work within your web page. You need to have your scripts there. You can edit the scripts in terms of what you want them to do with effects. You can manage the different selectors and actions, and so that's how you get Fancybox working in a page, is to use that.